I want to introduce the two people who are up here with me, one of whom wrote the wonderful essay in the catalog and helped with the understanding the show. That's Dr. Patrick Polk on my left, who is the Senior Curator of Latin American and Caribbean Popular Arts at the Fowler Museum, which is at UCLA. Yes, which is where my doctors are. At any rate, and you're another doctor, but different. Anyway, he's a lecturer in the Department of World Arts and Cultures and the Center of the Study of Religion at UCLA. He received his PhD from the UCLA Folklore and Mythology program in 2000, and his primary research interests include material religion and visual piety, religion and healing, popular religion in North America and Latin America, and African diasporic sacred arts, some of which are in the other room. Mm-hmm. Yes. He's conducted research, I love this list, in Brazil, Grenada, Haiti, Jamaica, Mexico, and throughout the United States. He's curated two recent exhibitions at the Fowler that I wish I'd seen, Visualizing Devotion, Jane Embroidered Shrine Hangings, and The House Was Too Small, Yoruba Sacred Arts from Africa and Beyond. On my right is someone I think you've met before, John Silvis, who is an art advisor who works out of New York and Vienna. He's just been posting wonderful things about his early summer tour of Europe and the Mediterranean and the Venice Biennale. John himself has done some art in his past, but he has curated a number of shows beyond the ones here in North America and in Europe. And he also writes frequently. And I lost the piece of paper that said what you wrote for, John. I'm really sorry. And so forgive me. Anyway, I goofed. But he writes at various publications. One of them is Artsy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remembered one thing. Okay. And he also is on social media. And his main goal is to introduce people to the variety and wonder of a lot of contemporary art. And he's pretty good at it, from what I know. So with that, we're going to chat a bit about what you're about to see.
Well, to start, I'd like to thank you, Roberta, Howard, for hosting these events. They're always so enriching, and was so touched by the music tonight, so thank you for sharing that with us. The conversation around this exhibition started because of your passion for all your travels, and I grew up traveling as well, and we have that in common. And I know that a lot of these are very personal to you. And so thank you also, Patrick, for being here and for your wonderful contribution.
Thank you.
Also, the didactic labels are fantastic. So I wanted to start asking you a little bit about your criteria in what you look for when you travel and find these objects. We've talked a lot about the collection from a contemporary standpoint, and often when we're looking at contemporary work around the world, we'll talk about different issues, the profile of the artist, topics you like. So I'm curious in this show of art from around the world, which we titled Close to Home. What is it that you're looking for?
Well, we have two kinds of travel that we've done as a family since pretty much 1994, when we took the long trip to Scandinavia. And we call one escape travel or rest travel, and that's a month in Hawaii. And the other travel in our family, we call it exploration travel. And we go to learn about the art, the history, the culture, and the religion of the places that we go. And we have engaged the best guides we could find who knew about those things, and we read and then made connections in the places where we went. And I don't know, I've always loved visual art of almost all kinds. And so we end up going to places and meeting people who create art in that various places. But it's rooted in their culture, and it's often rooted in their faith. And you'll see that in quite a few of the things in the show, because there's work from a woman who I'm pretty sure must now be deceased. You'll see her picture on the wall with me in Mardin, which is in way eastern Turkey, right on the Syrian border. So you can kind of imagine what's happened there in the last 20 years. And in their tradition, and partly because of their poverty, their icons were painted on canvas. And this woman, who you'll see the picture of, is renowned as an icon painter. And we actually got to go to a church where icons had been painted, some by her and the others by others, because it was a tradition. And my good Catholic friends back here who've tried really hard to help me become a Catholic, but it's not happening. At any rate, they've tried really hard, and God bless them, and they love me anyway, and they're praying that I'll see the light. And maybe, I'm not, anyway. I'm looking at them and we're smiling, I hope. At any rate, we've known Christians of various confessions all over the world. And I'm of the opinion that the world is in such sad shape that we better all hang together, or we're hanging separately. So, and in Mardin, of course, they're Church of the East, David, or Assyrian Orthodox, I'm not sure. What's left of them after the Iraq War. And so there was my faith alive in the hearts of people in a place where it was pretty darn hard to keep it. And I was humbled and amazed and fascinated by this tradition that I had known nothing about. And the same, it goes on. You'll see work from Ethiopia. Ethiopia has some of the most wonderful ancient churches with incredible frescoes and incredible artwork, where Jesus is very clearly not blonde-haired and blue-eyed. And it's really wonderful. He's Ethiopian. And I think, well, he is. He is everything, you know? And there you'll see what we picked up there. So there are those kinds of connections that are made. And then others of the work that you'll see isn't about faith, but it's about an art form that grew out of a culture, often, well, I'm thinking now of the Hmong quilts, often a women's art that started as something functional, but became something more. And what we'll see certainly became something more. The Hmong embroidered quilts that you will see, I think one was intended for a bed. What was she thinking? At any rate, I mean, that gorgeous thing. And and that has a deep tie in my family. My grandmother of blessed memory was a seamstress, the daughter of a seamstress. And my grandmother could take your measurements, look at a picture, and cut a pattern. It's a kind of visual intelligence. My father could do that with engines. He could take a diesel engine apart, like a train engine, and put it back together. And it's worked again. I mean, there are people who, who would put it back together and good luck. But no, if my dad did it, it worked. Anyway, and I think it's a kind of visual intelligence. I have a very little piece of it because I can pack the car better than anyone else. At any rate, but that's that, and I get nervous if things are off balance in a room. I rearrange furniture in hotels and because I'm uncomfortable. What were they thinking? At any rate, this furniture ought to be over there. Anyway, so there's a little of that. But my grandmother tried desperately to teach me to sew. And we actually made a dress. Well, I did the sewing. We spent a summer, she paid me to do it, but because she knew I needed a job to go back to college, and she wanted me to spend it with her, and I'm so glad I did. Anyway, it was white eyelet, and this dress is reminiscent of that. I still have the dress, and I finally lost enough weight I could wear it again. At any rate, so that was deep in my family. I could talk on and on about my grandmother's skill, but when I see that kind of textile art and that skill that went into that, I know what it is. I embroider. That's the one thing I do, and mine's not on that level, let me tell you. But I understand what it is, and I understand the kind of love that goes into it because you love doing it. At least I understand that. And so there's that piece. So it has to do with what we've learned and who we've met, but also with these pieces that come out of my own personal history that I understand what they're doing. And it just makes me happy to see it, and I love it.
Well, one of the things I loved particularly about the show are the Inuit sculptures. In particular, the woman holding two fish made out of whalebone. And to me, that's what really is distinctive about this body of work, or the things that you've collected, is the materiality. The title of the show, Close to Home, is also about taking those materials around you and working with them. And
The Inuit piece is my father was in Alaska in World War II, and he subsequently drove the Alkian Highway twice. And I was fool enough not to go the one time I had the chance. It's one of the big regrets in my life, frankly. So I knew about Alaska, and we finally went after he died. But that art, and I lived in Canada for 6 years, where there were galleries, and you could see the Inuit art, and I loved it. And the same is true for the Pueblo work, the ceramic Pueblo work. When I saw that, of course, the other love of my father's life was Arizona, and we went there a lot, to Arizona and New Mexico. So I saw that work, when I never dreamed I'd be able to buy it, and knew that and it grows right out of the land, which is the close to home part. It's the material they have.
so, Patrick, thanks again for being here with us.
Oh, thank you both. This is fantastic.
In a recent conversation we had, you said that you're really passionate about art in everyday life. You've done a lot of research in Latin American, Caribbean art. Can you tell us what stood out to you about this collection of works and how your interests and Roberta's aligned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think fundamentally it's about being in the world. And my particular academic interest, curatorial interest, is in how art and aesthetics, expressive behaviors are windows into and manifestations of being in the world, ways of being in the world. And then we can sort of narrow that down a little more also and just talk about ways of being religious. And then continue on from that, of like not just the ways of being religious, but the where of being religious, the when of being religious. And so when I hear you talking about travel, and I think of sort of the projects that I've done, and the one that really pops out in my mind in relation to this is not one that took me to another continent or to another country, but actually a project that's still sort of unfolding, but for a variety of reasons, and my wife, was part of this, is that she was taking ukulele classes by Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, and she's part of a group, and I was there with her, but not playing ukulele. And so I said, I need to do something. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to walk all of Vermont Avenue. Almost 23 miles. Wow. But, you know, and so I've walked all of it. But the point for me was actually to say, what if I take one of the longest streets in Los Angeles? And I'm just going to walk it and look for religion. Where do I see it? Where do you see faith? And it was something that, again, resonates with what you're talking about here. And what's in there is you walk it. I also scootered it and drove it and did all of that in different times. But there's the brick and mortar places of faith. There's the Catholic churches. There's the, you know, Protestant churches, the storefront churches, the mosques, the synagogues that aren't synagogues anymore, the churches that have changed. There's that brick and mortar space of the exterior and the interior. But then there's everything else. There's the murals. There's plants, just nopales with crosses somebody carved into them. There's shrines on the street where somebody passed away. There's homeless encampments that have altars that are spaces of faith. There was a shrine that I documented built by a number of unhoused people near Wilshire and Vermont. And when I was talking to one of the main people who had built and maintained this shrine for the Virgin of Guadalupe, you know, he said, one of the things he said, I was like, why do you have this here? Why here? And the first obvious question is because this is where I am, right? And when we look at all the art in there, we always have to understand that all comes from this is where I am.
Yes.
But also he said something important is he says, because at midnight the door to the church isn't open, right? And this is where we need the Virgin of Guadalupe, here on the street, where we are. You know, and so when I think about the things you've mentioned, the works from, you know, on canvas, on fabric, from, you know, a very pressurized place in Turkey, right? It's like, this is where we are, this is where we need it, this is how we need the divine to be present.
Desperately.
Even if it's in a way that we know we have to move quickly.
Yep.
And how do we carry it? How do we carry it with us? I mean, that also, what I love about the selection that John made and the pieces that you've collected is that we can talk about things from different parts of the world, completely different people, different times, different faiths. And again, look at it and see that human, that being human. So you mentioned the embroidered works from the Hmong embroideries you'll see in there. And there's two pieces. And this really will be important to the extent that if you can be in the same one spot and see both pieces. Because one of them is there, how it was, what it was when we were there. And then the other piece is how we left, why we left, what was left behind. And of course, they're embroidered and made because they're made here, right? They're Hmong American. So they tell a story of travel, of place, of home, right? So you get two homes at the same time. Two homes at the same time that are inseparable, right? You know, and one may not be reparable, and the other one is being built. And so, I mean, all of that is in there. So, thank you. That's all I can say is thank you.
No.
I just love it. I love it.
Thank you for loving it. Thank you for loving it. I thought, how is John going to find somebody to write anything about this? And then when we talked on the Zoom, I thought, oh my God, he found someone. I mean, who really got it. I was like ecstatic. And then there's Luis Tapia, who is one of the more famous people that's there. I mean, Helen Cordero and Margaret Tafoya, and even Ada Sawina, and the Trujillos. I mean, if you know about that tradition in New Mexico, those people all have names in that tradition. Helen Cordero and Margaret Tafoya particularly so. And Helen Cordero was the person, you will see her work, who brought back a tradition in Cochiti Pueblo ceramics of the singer. The singer who's telling the story of the people. And hers are haunting. You'll see Ada Sawina's, they're not so haunting. They're more cheerful. And she was a student who knew Helen Cordero. And then Margaret Tafoya is from Ildefonso, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. They're famous for the sheen of their pottery and they're glorious pieces. And it's what we have is a wedding cup that she did. And they're but it's totally different, and they're just miles apart, up and down the same road where all the pueblos are. But they responded to the material around them in different ways. And so every piece in there, I wrote this, I know the story of, because it has a place in my life. And Luis Tapia was hard to get because I wanted one. We had, and I think I sold it. A nativity, not a nativity, a Noah's Ark that he did, but he did it on this huge, like, yard square piece of plywood. Well, where are you going to put that? How can you show it to anybody ever? You know what I mean? And after a while, I just gave up and said, we should sell it to somebody who can figure out what to do with it. It's wonderful, but I can't figure out what to do with it. So, I love it, and I know who he is. I mean, he's a very big deal. I think he's still alive. Is he still alive?
Yes.
Yeah, he is still alive. Anyway, so we finally got a pretty wild Joseph and Mary, which I don't know, we'll have to see what the monks back here think of that, Joseph and Mary. I think they'll be fine, at any rate. But it's clearly a Hispanic street Joseph and Mary, and maybe the streets need Joseph and Mary more than a lot of people, so it's a good thing. And the more I've lived with that piece, the more I actually like it, because doggone it, they're on the street. Yeah.
I love that piece. That is honestly, it's my favorite. It's my favorite piece in there. And again, I think the things that you were particularly highlighting there is the ways in which we can look at art, one piece together or several pieces collected, right, and see sort of the history of it.
Yeah.
To see something communal,
Yep.
the ways in which a tradition develops
Yep.
and how it moves across time.
And criticizes itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And particularly because then you get the innovation.
Yep.
You have someone who's like, I'm going to do it a little different way. Maybe it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to be reformed. Maybe it needs to be a little more old school.
Yeah.
But then you both get the communal, the collective, and the individual, whether that plays through community, like a specific pueblo or a family.
Yep.
And it's just that engagement always with what art has done and what it can do going forward.
It's like the Oaxaca guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's this, we have a number of nativities I don't know if they're all the same person, but I think they're from different members of the family. I'm not sure. They're from Oaxaca, Mexico, which has a very unique folk art tradition of color and design. And they make the wildest nativities on the planet. And John picked maybe the wildest that we have, which is Jesus is being born in a mermaid. And they're all there, and the mermaid has a special significance in their culture.
Yeah.
And a positive significance in their culture. So it's a good place for Jesus to be born, but there he is. He's born in a mermaid. And with this wonderful color and joy. They're just joyful. They make you want to dance, don't they?
Yeah, why is that your favorite one, John?
Yeah, why is that your favorite one?
Well, I think because it is so outrageous, and in the West here we're raised with these really, romantic images, and it's just such a playful, personal take on the birth of Jesus.
It makes you smile. Yeah, and part of what I loved about it was all these people all over the world who believe what I believe. Yeah. The ones that are Christian, it was like, woo, that's exciting. Look at that. I never would have thought of it like that. But these people believe, basically what I believe, and look at how they expressed it. That's fun. And then there are people, that there's work in there that isn't, related to Christianity. But, we haven't even talked about the Aboriginal artists. Mm-hmm. Although one of them said that she believed in Jesus and E.T., which, You know, think about it for a minute. There's something there. Anyway, but she's quite wild, and I think there are 3 of her works there, and then some others. Because in the 90s, we went to Australia a lot, partly because our son loved animals, and they have animals in Australia. Like, you never saw animals. And he loved it so much, and it made him, I mean, we all have great memories of those trips. And I, of course, wanted to see the art. And the Art Gallery of New South Wales is a great place. And then when we got up to Alice Springs, which is a center of Aboriginal art, I found out which is the gallery that you should go to. And that's where I bought the other pieces. But it's a long time ago now.
Great. Well, I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seat and want to actually see the work. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I have to give kudos to John, who curated it and put the show together. You'll see it's masterfully done. And for Anne Haru, who's done a lot of work relative to this show. And
Janie and Eric.
And Janie Bowman, who did a lot of work, and the wondrous Eric Pereza, who's not here. There's Janie. And they all make it happen. And also, once again, to Patrick, who wrote a wonderful essay, and I think loves this as much as I do.
Is that
Yeah.